Hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Kip. Hi, Jeff.
Hey all.
How's everybody doing?
Good to see you
Great.
guys.
We're doing well.
Doing fine. We're in Colorado. Where's everybody else?
Florida.
Oh,
Florida. Wow.
where in Florida?
Bradenton,
Bradenton.
Sarasota.
We grew up in Miami,
Where are you in Florida? In Colorado?
in the mountains outside Denver.
Okay. We're just in Durango last week.
Ah,
Oh. Visiting my dad.
we came out here on vacation 51 years ago and stayed.
Nice.
So waiting on some more people to join.
We'll get going fairly shortly. All right, Kip, should we get started, get going?
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, well, let's get going, and we can let some other people in as they show up. And again, like to thank you guys for spending some time with us this Thursday night. This is our second virtual release party that we're doing, and we're pretty excited about this quarter's releases. What's exciting to me is the fact that in addition to a couple of kind of Beckmen favorite traditional wines like the Estate Grenache, the Clone One, and the EXP Aggregate, we've got a couple of new wines, like brand new, never been done before. Something that things that Steve's always wanted to work with or try out or attempt to do. And obviously, take advantage of the growing season that he had and make these really fun new wines. And I guess we'll start off with one of those wines, which is the Counois Rosé. So instead of a white wine in the shipment, for those of you who get the white and two reds, this time we did a rosé to celebrate for spring. And rather than being our traditional Grenache rosé, which we also made this year, but is not a part of the club shipment, Steve made a rosé out of Counois. And for those of you not familiar with Counois, that is kind of the mystery grape, or the fourth grape that's always added to Cuvée Lebec. It always makes up about 5% of that. And if you go back to the history of Cuvée Lebec, Steve really wanted to add that grape almost from the grape like it from the beginning, but he didn't really know what it was. So when he first started making Cuvée Lebec, it was just Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, your standard GSM blend. But then he went to a tasting up in Paso Robles at Talbot's Creek and got introduced to this grape called Counois, which had this really vibrant acidity, really added a lot of brightness to the wine. And that was kind of what he was looking for in the Cuvée Lebec. He wanted to make something that was a little bit more brighter, a little bit more energetic, and he invited Counois. Counois is also used in France to make some rosés as well. That nice bright acidity, along with those great fruit flavors, really turn out a lovely rosé. And this is Steve's first attempt at it. Production was very small. What did we make, Kip? Like 75 cases? 100 cases?
Yeah, 95, I think, is what the tech sheet says on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So 95 cases. So truth be told, by the time we shipped it out to club, we've only probably got about 10 or 12 cases left. So it's something that's not going to be around very long. But what he meant to do with this is something that want to make something that's really fresh and fun for summer. It was bottled on its own. It's kind of easy, light drinking, refreshing. We've been pouring a little bit of it to some members in the tasting room. We did a live release party a couple of weeks ago, and I guess I'll let Kip kind of give you some of his thoughts on the wine, as well as kind of what people have been telling him about it.
Yeah, so I'm really loving this right now. It's got a little bit more spice than our typical rosé, a little bit more of that like deeper cranberry note, a little bit more of that red berry element. So it's just really like that perception of sweetness, even though the wine's fermented fully dry, really clean. staff, when we did our training on it, was really excited by it too. Like we started talking food pairings, think of things like, grilled stone fruits and cheese, or even like, this is something that with the summertime coming up, like this will be great on the patio, great with like tortilla chips and guacamole, even just to keep it fun. But yeah, just really kind of impressed with this. And just again, that kind of spice note, that vibrancy that it brings to Cuvée Lebec, we're seeing it kind of on its own with a little bit more acid in the glass right now. So having fun with this.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to open it or try it, but it's definitely one that is meant to be consumed now. This is summertime. This is rosé season, and this is one that really is like Kip said, very refreshing. A little bit of the spice to it. Just a super fun, easy drinking wine, and kind of a nice complement to the rosés we've made in the past. We've done a couple years ago. We made some other rosé. We made a rosé out of a Block 6, and we made a clone one. I think we made a Block 8 rosé. So some different rosés we've made in the past. This is something out of a completely new grape for the winemaking team, and we're all super excited and think it turned out really pretty.
Yeah, this is definitely one I'm really enjoying on its own, and actually really excited to play around a little bit more with in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So fun little cheese wine too.
For sure.
Yep.
Any comments or questions on this wine?
We did try it and I really liked it. I liked how it had acidity and a really nice creamy, like it had a little butter, but then fruit on top of that. And it's nice to just have a different rosé. I was very excited when I saw it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you see a lot of this. Well, there's not a lot of this grape planted in America, period. I think the last stat I saw was there something like 40 acres of it planted in total, and we have what, an acre and a half of something like that of it. So it's not something that's seen all that much. But it's a fun grape, and certainly one that I think Steve found an interesting new use for sure.
Why did you decide to plant it?
We decided to plant it. It was mostly for the Cuvée Lebec.
Okay.
It was basically when Steve when Steve first started making Cuvée Lebec without the Counois back in the early 2000s. He always thought the wine was a little bit. He called it a brooding wine. It was kind of dark. It had a much darker complex, and he wanted something that had a little bit more brightness, a little bit more energy, a little bit more freshness to it. And so he experimented with adding more Grenache to the wine, but Grenache has got a lot more tannin in it. So the wine was getting a little bit more too tannic when he was experimenting with it. And then he went up to a winery in Paso Robles called Tablas Creek. And back then, what one of Tablas's Creek business was actually importing cuttings from France, from Chateau Beaucastel.
Okay.
And they had just gotten their first crop of Counois released and had put it into some of their blends, and his eyes opened up and he's like, that's what we want. That's what we want to add for it. So he promptly bought some cuttings from the folks up at Tablas Creek and grafted them onto some vines, and a couple of years later was able to add the grape into the Cuvée Lebec. And so
Okay.
even though it's only about 5% of the Cuvée Lebec every year, he calls it kind of the glue that kind of really, brings it all together. Kind of that final piece that it's like doing a puzzle when you find that final piece and put it in, and you get the clear picture of what you want. That's what the Counois became for this one, for the Cuvée Lebec, and now it's fun to see him take it in another completely different direction, and make a wine on its own.
Okay.
Jeff, how long has he been putting it in the Cuvée Lebec?
I believe the first vintage was 2005. So
Okay.
almost
Wow.
20 years.
Wow. So it's been
Yeah.
a while. So I've been drinking this for a while.
Yeah. You and me both, pal.
Okay.
Are you
Yeah.
ever gonna, are you ever gonna do just a pure Kunwa varietal as a varietal?
Topless is one.
That's it's pretty esoteric, don't you think, Kip? I mean, it's kind of an acquired taste.
I've
Yeah.
seen
Well,
maybe like
Topless
2 or
does-
3 other wineries do it, but it's not a high yielding vine. So I don't know if we need to
No.
get a
No,
crop
no,
to,
it's
to really do that.
Yeah.
I know Topless does it.
Mhm.
Yeah, they do it in some years when they have
Yes.
a particularly good harvest. Like Kip said, it does not produce a lot of grapes, and I think that's one of the reasons why people don't like to grow it, is just because it takes up acreage that they could put in something that's, they could put Grenache in there that, grows like a weed, or they could put something else that kind of gets some volume to it. This is a very, very niche wine, and I've had a couple of them. It's hard enough to sell wines of grapes that people have heard of, much less Kunwa. I think it's probably a little bit difficult to sell. And to be honest, we don't have very much of it. So what we typically grow is what we typically need to kind of make it 5% of that Cuvée Lebec every year.
And
But
you don't need a ton of it for what you're using it for either.
yeah, well, we need what we grow. We don't have a
Yeah,
ton of it.
yeah.
Like I said, out of the 150 acres that we have, we've got like an acre plus of this, so it's not a very big part of our vineyard.
It's also late ripening
Okay.
too, which can cause other challenges to grow it efficiently and effectively, so that the later you get into the season, more challenges can happen. So you might not even get that crop after all. So there's some of those elements to it as well.
Yep.
So it's good to keep it as a blending wine for us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Topless is in a different climate zone, actually. They're a lot much warmer than you guys are.
They get hot up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is also grown fairly high up on Purissima, which
Mhm.
again tends to get a little cooler. You get a lot more exposure to those ocean breezes coming off the coast. So it does get quite a bit cooler on that particular part of the property.
Very good. Thank you.
I am now always going to think of this wine as the dude's rug. It really ties the wine together.
Yeah. There you go. Cool. Well, with
Keep
that,
abiding.
there you go. Very good.
I was counting on you, Kip.
I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna get that, but.
We ready to move on to the estate Grenache?
Yeah, let's talk about estate Grenache. Go ahead, Kip.
So 22 was actually a really challenging vintage for all of Santa Barbara County and parts of Paso. We had a shatter early on, meaning we lost a bunch of fruit when it was still in flower form due to extremely high winds. And like I said, that affected all of Santa Barbara County, as far north as parts of Paso. Top it all off, it was the driest vintage we've ever had, with only about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall the entire growing season. And then beginning of September, we had a heat wave. So with that in mind, you have a vintage that is definitely a lot of challenge for a lot of winemakers, but I love that because it really lets you see who the best winemakers are. And yes, I'm a little biased. I worked here, but I feel like Steve did an amazing job with this wine, coming from some of our oldest plantings here on the estate, which, Beckman's bought back in 1994. You have this bright wine that has a lot more depth and spice than some of the previous vintages. I'm actually really just the response we're getting on this wine in the tasting room is awesome. We're pouring it on our tasting flight right now for club members. Staff's all very excited about it. We're all having a lot of fun with this wine. So I know Jeff can comment a little bit more on the history of this block, and pass the torch back to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a block that was planted. It's on the far side of the vineyard. So for those of you who've been to the property recently, when you drive in and you see the vines kind of at the end of the parking area, it's kind of tucked back in those blocks of grapes. This site typically produces a wine that's a little bit different than this year's vintage. It doesn't typically have this much structure and ripeness to it, and this is something where we've got these kind of nice clonal material that Steve's brought over from Purissima and put onto these vines, and it really produces a very distinctive Grenache. Being a little bit further inland from Topless makes it Purissima makes it a little bit of a warmer site. So you do typically get a kind of a brighter Grenache that it's got a lot of fans and people love it, but it sometimes lacks kind of the structure that this one has, don't you think, Kip?
Yeah, typically I find this to be a little bit more of a, just like fruit forward and maybe a little hint of spice. But this vintage definitely it has more structure, more tannin, more depth of flavor. Honestly, I love every time I take a sip, just kind of sitting back and letting it ride and just sort of seeing how it opens up even in the mouth. Just the complexity on this has me really just kind of going. I mean, I'll blatantly say it. I'm sorry. This is probably my favorite vintage of the estate Grenache ever. So definitely been having fun with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's I think it's a credit to Steve that he was able to create the wine. To give you an idea, we typically harvest anywhere from 350 to 400 tons of grapes every year. I think we were in like the 280 tons, 270 tons range in 22. So it was a really, really, really small crop. And that was best, as Kip said, that was because we had a poor fruit set. We had a small crop to begin with. Even before we had the heat spike and all the other problems that the season brought along. So, but usually when you do get those smaller vintages, you kind of get some really good wines out of them. It's kind of ones where it's like, it's one of those, as a sales guy, it's like, God, I wish I had more of that wine to sell. It's when you make a third less than you normally make, and you're like, oh, we're going to sell out of it so quickly. So this is one I think that's going to be a big favorite of people. Again, what's the production on this? Like 300 cases?
We got up to about, I think, like 425-ish, something in that range.
Yeah. So down from the typical 550 to 600 cases. So again, it's a really great vintage of the 22 of the estate Grenache, and one that we're particularly proud of the winemaking team for doing such a good job on this wine.
Yeah.
What do you think about pairings for this wine, Kip?
So I'm loving kind of the spice notes, that kind of little bit of a cranberry note. I'm thinking like this with a lot of poultry, like rotisserie chicken, or even like, I'm probably going to set aside an extra bottle of this for Thanksgiving for the turkey. But despite the structure, I find the tannins aren't too aggressive or grippy. So one thing I want to play around with this is like, I like to do like a grilled salmon with a pomegranate and wine reduction. So typically I do Pinot, but I'm actually thinking I might even get a little bit of our Grenache in for that to reduce that down with some pomegranates and pour over some salmon. But we also did, this is one of the wines that we also did. If you guys heard about the club party we did a couple weeks ago, we did a wine and cheese class at the very beginning of it. And so this wine we paired with a Schnebelhorn, which was this cheese out like this awesome cow milk cheese that just really balanced out the acidity, brightened the fruit, and just really was a perfect pairing. I had a lot of fun putting that together with Caillou Cheese Shop out in Solvang. Thoughts?
Any thoughts on the estate Grenache? Any big Grenache fans out there?
Seeing some hands going up, some thumbs. Yeah.
I
Excellent.
haven't tried it yet.
I love this one. It's definitely less kind of light than others.
Less light?
Yeah, like some others that we've had from you guys, a little more like when you look at even the color, and this does have a little bit of that Pinot color, but on the palate, it's almost more like a Spanish Garnacha, a little bit. I think it's amazingly good.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely could see some of that like earthy, dusty qualities get out of some of those Spanish Grenaches too. That bright fruit, that bright acid, but a little bit more of that like little earthy feel on the tannins. And I'm with you on that too. Definitely having some fun with this.
And it will be good with Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's move on to the third wine of the night, which is the Graciano, which is again another entirely new wine. First time Steve's ever worked with this grape, produced a wine of it, and in talking to him about it, the wine that you have here wasn't the wine that he actually originally envisioned for this. I think when he bought it, for those of you not familiar with the grape Graciano, it's predominantly grown in Spain, in the north of Spain. So it's used a lot in Rioja wines. It's typically blended a lot of times with Grenache. And I think when Steve originally got this plantings, these grapes from him, I think he thought of kind of trying to imitate one of those Rioja wines and blending it with some Grenache to make something kind of unique and kind of interesting. But in the winemaking process, as he started blending with it and working with it, and the team had to a lot. He said the learning curve on it was not as steep as he thought it would be. He thinks they got better working with it over time. But every time he blended with something, they would think, well, wow, it just tastes better. It just tastes better by itself. So at some point along the line, a decision was made to give up the blending and just make 100% Graciano wine. And the results has been pretty overwhelmingly positive. I hadn't tasted this wine since it was in a barrel sample, and the wine that you have in front of you now is very different than what came out of the barrel about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. And that kind of little bit extra aging in the barrel, a little bit of bottle age before he released it, has really developed, really produced a wine that's got some just great vibrant fruit to it. It really is one that the tannins have calmed down a lot. It was a very tannic wine when I tasted it originally, and people were really digging this wine at the member party. It was the first time most of the people had, said they tried it, but they've probably had it blended in with something else in the past. But it was the first time a lot of people had tried it as 100% wine, and they really liked the results of it. And I know the winemaking team is really happy with how this wine turned out, and we were super excited to include it in a quarterly club shipment because it's something that we kind of want to keep that club shipments fresh, bright, and innovative, and certainly a lot of our small, and full of our small production wines. So again, another small production wine, 125-ish or so cases of this wine. So not quite as limited as the Counois Rosé, but still pretty limited. But it's one that has been fun in the tasting room. I know the staff has really enjoyed learning about the grape, experiencing it for the first time. And I'll let Kip talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. We were all kind of wonderfully caught off guard by this wine when it got released. Just the depth of flavor, all that like dark fruit note. I get a lot of fig off of this. Like every time I've tried it, just having a lot of fun with it. So my head's kind of going like, as far as food pairings are concerned, doing this with something like, I haven't tried it yet, but I want to try it with like prosciutto wrapped like mission figs, like the dark purple figs. Definitely want to do this with like some pork chops, like a blueberry compote or blackberry compote. Just doing some like reduction of black fruit on that. Even so far as like, even with the depth of flavor, that nice little acid to cut through a little fat, I really want to do like a pizza primavera. So like, some spring vegetables on a pizza, just with that nice sort of grill mark on there too. But everybody's been really kind of having fun with this wine, whether they've experienced it or not. And it's also fun kind of knowing the history of how it got accidentally brought over to the US thinking it was Mourvedre. And it was a big goof where they it was actually shipped out of Portugal, some vineyard cuttings to I believe it was Paso. And it was someone out there that realized, no, this is not Mourvedre. It's growing different color, different shoots. And it's been some genetic testing. It's more and more people are starting to play around with this. And I feel like Steve and crew did an amazing job with this, definitely having fun with it.
I love the rosé, but this one is like amazing. I really hope you do it again. I love it's sort of medium bodied. It kind of, you could use it like a heavier medium, to your point, like pork or something. Anyway, I think it's fantastic. And I hope you guys make it again.
We've
There's
had
some
Hey,
We've had about
question.
3 or 4 different Grenache or Gracianos. And this, I gotta tell you, to me is the best. It really is awesome, guys. I mean, it's hard to find, but when you find it, it's good. But this one, you really nailed it. Thank you.
That's good to know because I have not had one. I didn't know it. I saw it in the shipment. So I was like, I put it aside because I'm like, okay, I have to try it. And you're right. It was a very fresh shipment. I was so excited. I put the rosé directly in the freezer and we had it, right the day our shipment came. And this one we opened a little bit later, but they've both been very exciting. And I appreciate your note about Graciano because I just would have assumed they're all this good, but I know Beckman always does the best. So, so yeah, I'm not surprised.
Amen.
In your area, I think Grace is doing it.
Yeah,
A
tribute to Grace and,
Los Alamos is,
yeah.
that was the first time we had ever had it, was
Mhm.
at her.
And we've had a few groups. We search it
That
out
was-
now
and-
if
and
we
that
see
one
it.
was very good also.
So, yeah.
Hey, Kip, question. This was not in our Q2. Is it because we're in a different wine club?
Right, so this was so with the what this went out with was this if you're in the Purísima All Red, this would have been the replacement for the white wine in lieu of like the rosé of Counoise. And if you're Inner Circle, then you wouldn't be getting either that or the rosé of Counoise typically.
Okay.
But this was sort of
Right.
our lower price point red wine for the shipments.
Ah.
So
Okay, because
that's-
we didn't get the rosé. We're not in the white. We're in the red, whatever, something.
So
We got
your Inner Circle, right? You got like 3 each of the Estate Grenache and the Clone 1 Syrah.
and then EXP, and then we're on the EXP. So we got the EXP aggregate, and then we got a late harvest BDP.
Yeah.
Okay, because
That's what we got. But look, that's what we got.
Graciano,
But
I
look,
would like to try. I did not realize. I'm like, it sounds good. I've never had it. So okay,
Well,
thank you.
when I knew you were gonna do the Zoom, I ordered 2 bottles of it because we were excited to try it because we've had it, it's kind of
had
a
a-
new wine for us, but we
That's
wanted
it.
to try yours, so, and it was worth it. It's very good. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, there's definitely some hope in the tasting room that Steve makes this again. We're all having
Yes.
fun with it.
Really good.
Absolutely.
Hey, Kip, how late is this? This is pretty late in the year you picked this in the season.
So this
You
one we
pretty warm
picked-
weather.
So this was actually 21 vintage, which was a little bit cooler. It's actually one of the coolest vintages we'd had. So it was a little later for us in that it was picked October 20th. So not late. It wasn't like some of the early November wines we brought in that year. This was coming out of a little vineyard in Happy Canyon, so it's even further inland than us, a little bit warmer over there. So it did ripen up properly over there. But yeah, we picked this before like the Grenache, the Mourvedre, the Counoise that year.
So is this on your estate or was it like out in Grissini or something like that?
It's
It
a
was a
vineyard.
tiny little vineyard. I don't even know the name of it, unfortunately.
He asked us not to release the name of where it was. So
That's fine. That's fine.
someone Steve has known for years. He's purchased some other things from them in the past, and I think it's an organic vineyard, so he's very comfortable with their farming practices in terms of what they do with it. And this was a really kind of fun wine for him to experiment with. And I think he was kind of trying to, as I said, I think he was trying to do something different. But sometimes that's the beauty of being a small winery without too many people making decisions. There's no decision by committee here. It's kind of done quickly, and we kind of decide what works the best and what we think will come out of it. So we're all super excited about this wine. We'll definitely pass your thoughts on to Steve about doing it again. I don't know whether he'll do it or not. I know this wine, prior to its release brought him, I think, a little bit of frustration. I think trying to figure it out, and it took him a while to understand it. But now it seems a shame to get that experience and not use that experience a little bit more. So
I think he nailed it.
that being said, I don't think we'll ever make more than 125 cases of the wine. It's just not. It's something that's a little bit.
Just so you're aware, there's a winery up in Amador County Runquist Winery. They've been making Graciano for a couple of years now, and it's very good. I haven't tried yours yet, but everything I've tried of yours has been great. But Runquist up in Amador County makes a very nice Graciano too.
Yeah.
No,
Good to know. Thank you.
What's it, the what?
Yeah.
Runquist, Runquist Winery.
I haven't heard of that
John,
one.
thank you for the vote of approval on this one too.
Yeah, if you haven't gotten a shipment of it, I say buy some because it's really good.
And our plan, even if we've gotten the shipment, buy some more. It's very good. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we're quite happy with how it's doing in the tasting room. So it's not a wine that's gonna stick around forever, but definitely having fun with it while it lasts.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, let's go on to really kind of a what I would consider an old Beckman kind of standby, regular, kind of one of the most popular wines that we make every year. It's a wine that we highlight in Futures just about every year, and that is that Clone One Syrah, all coming off of Purísima Mountain. And for those of you who've heard my rant about the clone history of the Clone
Is this in the
One
shipment?
on Futures, you get to hear it again now. So Clone One is the original, was basically got the #1 from UC Davis, since it was the first certified clone of Syrah that was quarantined and able to plant in California. The clone has a very interesting history. It was brought over to UC Davis from the Barossa Valley in Australia. And people thought it was actually native to that area, but what they've subsequently learned is that it actually started off in France, and the original vines in France were wiped out, and during the phylloxera epidemic, plague, I guess, down there. And so it was basically taken from France to Australia, where in the 1800s, where it thrived for several generations, and then brought to this country in the 1900s, and then subsequently quarantined and propagated. This produces, probably the one. This is kind of the rock star clone that we have. We grow 8 or 9 different clones of Syrah over on Purísima Mountain, and this one clone is the one that has been kind of a single varietal bottling almost since its inception. It kind of has everything going for it. To me, this is probably one of our most consistent wines year over year, wouldn't you say, Kip, in terms of
Yes.
flavor profile, quality? What's interesting now is Steve's like, you can't get any more of the cuttings. The clone is no longer being propagated anywhere in the world anymore. So he would have to basically use his own cuttings in order to get more of this wine. But again, it's kind of, to me, it's always been kind of that burly Syrah that kind of everybody loves. It's kind of what people look for when they look for Syrah. They kind of come to Clone One. It's always great to smell this wine, right? I mean, just the savory notes, the smoky notes on it, are just mouth-watering year after year after year. Thoughts, Kip?
Yeah, I've always found the Clone One to be one of the most elegant Syrahs we produce, and the aromatics on it are always off. Like, just, it's one of those wines. Every time we release it, I just want to spend about a week just stuck with my nose in the glass and never pull it out. Just because it's just so beautifully aromatic, and cooler vintages to me have always reminded me of like sort of almost walking into like an old school Italian deli where you walk in, you have like the prosciutto and salami hanging off the rafters, the espresso machines going off in the corner. But this 22 vintage being that hot, dry, concentrated year, I'm having so much fun with it. And pardon me if I'm going a little too crazy on it, but I always get this almost like chocolate coated maple bacon on the nose on this, and especially on the palate with this current release. So that food wise, like being a little bigger, a little bolder, I want to play with this and lamb because there's also a little hint of mintiness to it. We did this wine. This is the last wine we did for the wine and cheese class at the club party, and we paired it with an old like a well aged, like a 24-month aged Gouda, and it just made the wine and cheese, that combination made it taste like just caramel. It was dessert in glass. So I had a lot of fun coming up with that pairing. But yeah, there's just I'm loving how like concentrated and bold this vintage is, but still elegant on the palate. It's not overly tannic, overly grippy. So I just find this particular vintage of this wine very exciting.
So quick question, because we love this and Block 6. Just what's your take on how do you describe the two of them and how they differ?
So for me, Clone 1 is usually a little bit more aromatic and a little softer on the palate. Block 6 is bigger, bolder, more structured, more powerful. So with that in mind, they're also coming from different parts on the mountainside. So Clone 1 is usually a little bit lower, you get a little bit more clay soil. The Block 6 coming from the top of Parissimo Mountain Vineyard, where we have all that limestone peeking through, so you get more like earthy minerality out of that too, more the structure that comes from it. So for me, like I said, the Clone 1 is more aromatic, like more aromatically expressive, where I'd say the Block 6 is more powerhouse on the palate. Would be my sort of basic rule of thumb on them. Jeff, would you care to comment or?
Yeah, and to me, what always sets the Clone 1 off is those aromatics, like Kip was saying. I mean, Clone 1 smells like Clone 1, like almost since birth. Like when you walk into the barrel room and it's fermenting, in the morning, you think you've walked into like a pot roast is cooking in 48-degree temperature in the barrel room. So it's pretty amazing from that. Again, as Clip says, it's very elegant. It's got some really nice. It does a great to me. It's always been a great combination of kind of that, Rhone savoriness you find in a cool climate Syrah, but yet it's got some really great dark fruit that you would find coming out of Australia in a warm climate Syrah. It's kind of got that really unique balance. Whereas the Block 6 to me, because it's grown much higher, we typically get a much smaller crop. There's not as much organic material on that part. It's also kind of more exposed to those winds coming off of the Pacific. So to me, it's always had a little bit more of those kind of secondary. I mean, it's always everything we do has, it's California, it's Central Coast. We do get warm, so everything's going to have some really great fruit to it. But to me, that one's like nice and fruity without being jammy. And it does have a lot of those kind of secondary and tertiary flavors that kind of show the more wilder side of an earthier side of Syrah. And, it's funny. People ask me like, which one is your favorite? And some days I feel like, God, I drink the Clone 1. I'm like, God, this is so amazing. And other days I drink the Block 6. It's like, yeah, this one's my favorite. So, it kind of depends on your mood. I guess kind of a little bit depends on the food. But to me, I think that, to me, the aromatics versus kind of the more earthiness, the texture on the Block 6 kind of makes the difference between the two. So I don't know if it's helpful or not.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. It helps because we were kind of talking the same thing. I'm like, the Block 6 has so much more mouthfeel and it's just more earthy. And so it helps to be like validated that what we're seeing and thinking is what you're saying. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's just different parts of the vineyard are going to give you different things. Lower part of the vineyard versus higher part of the vineyard. Different clonal material. Again, you've got kind of different clones. The Block 6 is made up of 3 different clones versus the single clone that is, in Clone 1. So
I always love this wine. So we usually do we'll do a bottle each night, and then if the night's feeling great, we'll open a second bottle. But like the thing is, you can't go down in quality. So for the second bottle, we opened a Clone 1, and so we had each a glass, pumped it out, set it aside. The next night, after a day of being open, oh my gosh, this wine just absolutely blew me away. And I typically am not that patient to let it sit much. I'm like, man, it was a whole new experience for this wine.
Yeah.
Jeff, John Gilbert wrote, if you could comment a little bit more about, do we know why Clone 1 isn't being propagated any longer? I'm not sure on that one.
I don't know the answer. I guess I'd have to ask, maybe Steve knows, I can ask him. I'm, there's.
I was just curious because it's awfully good. So,
I mean, I don't know whether there was a problem with them doing, I don't know. I'm not even gonna hazard a guess.
That's okay. That's okay. I was just like, if it's good, why would you, unless you want like limited quantities or something, or I don't know if it's like art, you sell a certain number of lithographs and then you stop.
Yeah, like I said, maybe, I mean, I'm pretty sure the person we bought it from isn't in business anymore. So, who knows? Maybe that's, I don't know.
All I'm going to say is I'm glad we got our hands on it, and we don't have enough competition on it in the best kind of way. I'm happy about that. We got it, and we're happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're, it's like
Hey, quick question. Have you guys had any Australian wines that are all or primarily Clone 1? And if so, I'm curious how it kind of compares.
I wouldn't know. I mean, I've had Australian Syrahs, but they don't, I've never researched what clone is actually in any of them, and not that I could actually ever find it.
I don't know if there's like some Clone 1 club, man, behind closed doors, and you guys all get together.
I don't know. Maybe we've got the last of the Clone 1 that exists on the planet. Who knows?
Yeah, not to my knowledge on Australians. I don't know enough about the clonal selections out there, so that the Shirazes I've had, I'm not sure what the clones are on it typically. So, yeah, sorry if that's not a fleshed out enough answer, but truthfully, like some of that information doesn't make it across the ocean.
No, I'm just curious.
Thanks.
Yeah, hey, cheers to what you guys are doing with this wine. It's outstanding.
Thank you.
Glad you guys are enjoying it for sure. And then I guess that brings us to the final wine, which is the EXP aggregate, which is always a fun wine. And this is a wine which I don't know. Does anybody know why we call it aggregate?
No.
I would say it's a mix of several things.
A lot of things.
It's a mix of a lot of things. In fact,
I think there's seven different grapes in there. Is that right?
Would you call it the minestrone of wine?
That's what I would call it. Is the Ministry of Beckmen wine. It's kitchen sink. It is basically the last little bit of every single barrel of red wine that we produce. That's what goes into it. So it is an aggregation of an entire vintage. So all the hundreds of barrels that we have in our barrel room that have red wine in them from 2022. The last little bit goes into as we pull them out and put them into tank and bottle them. There's a little bit residual that's left, and Rory, Steve's assistant, takes a pitcher and pours it into the pitcher, and then he's got a steel barrel that's marked aggregate, and he puts that into those steel barrels. And over the year, as we bottle more wines, though, that barrel gets filled up. And as a result, you get this, and then it gets filtered and finished, and you get this kind of fun aggregate of basically Beckmen Vineyards red wines. It's a wine he's been making for several years, even though it's been it's in kind of always been in the, hasn't always been in, but it's been in the EXP program for years, and it's just a fun wine that the team loves to make year after year after year, and it's kind of always pretty expressive of the vintage, I think, don't you, Kip?
Yes, I always find that these are really fun kind of amalgamations of the year, and sort of it literally is collections of the best of our red barrels of wine. This might be doing the wine a bit of a disservice, but I like to compare it to for all those fans of Mel Brooks, like Young Frankenstein. This is to me like the most Patrick Frankenstein's monster that we've ever created, but this can sing and dance putting on the Ritz. Like it moves far more elegantly than you'd ever expect, and there's just so many layers to this wine, and it's just so much fun. And yeah, it's as Jeff was kind of commenting, this is kind of Rory's baby, in that he was the one that kind of mentioned that with the lees, which are like the yeast cells and some of the particulate matter that fall out of the wine and settle to the bottom of the barrel. Instead of just washing them away, we collect them, and he's saying we get about like a 50% return on what settles out. So we're able to really like get that out, have some fun with wine that we otherwise would have lost. So yeah, it is a blend of all the best red barrels from 2021. So yeah, we do have Syrah, Grenache, Cabernet Sauvignon, Mourvedre, Counoise, Merlot, and some of the Graciano in here as well. So it is the 7 varietals from the year.
Yeah.
Do you ever taste this or blend this when you're blending, say, no, this one doesn't go, or they just all go?
They pretty much all go.
Okay.
You don't really want to.
Minestrone, as they say.
You don't really want to taste it when it's in its
This is like a hairy buffalo, man.
Well,
yeah.
it's very good, and we're drinking it right now, so it's excellent.
It
Drinking it now.
drinks
It's
like
super nice, yeah.
it sounds, or it drinks like it's a way more intentionally made wine than what you're describing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a lot more thought than it's more fun to describe it my way, but there's a lot of thought that goes into there is a lot of thought that goes into making this wine, and there's actually a lot of work that goes into making this wine.
No,
As Kip said, you're getting basically the last little bit and a lot of other I guess fermented matter, it's all organic, but it's definitely not all juice that's going into this. And the ability to extract the juice out of that
so good.
really lends to a very interesting and fun wine. It's something that I think is, it's something you could certainly lie down a little bit, but truth be told, I think this wine is, and most of the EXP wines are best drunk young.
So
this,
when you said not all juice, you mean stems and skins, or what are you actually talking about?
Yeah, it's not so much stems, because most everything we do is destem these days. But it's a lot of skins. There's probably some bits of yeast in there that have gone unfermented. So it's just stuff that kind of makes its way down to the bottom of a wine barrel. Obviously there's some juice in there as well, but there's some skins and some residual and stuff things in there as well. So that's what it is.
Amen to that.
So this can vary from year to year? I mean, is there a huge difference?
The one thing to really keep in mind with this wine is that it really is a collection of all of the red wine from the best of our red barrels. So year to year, it's always going to be predominantly Syrah and Grenache and Cab, because it's kind of based off of like our productions amounts of those. You'll always have a little bit of the Merlot, the Mourvedre, the Counoise. Yeah. But then like if we're doing a different varietal that year, so like for instance, the Graciano on this year made it into the aggregate. When we did the 2020, there was some of the Petite Syrah and Cab Franc that we made that year that made it into that instead. So there's some small percentages that can vary, but as Jeff said, we joke that it's not that intentional, but it is very intentionally made, and there's a reason that we bottle and release it, because it is worth doing that. And just the thought that goes into it, the science that goes into it, to make a very balanced wine every time. You will get some variations, but again, we're talking small percentages.
Yeah, again, it's kind of based on what, like Kip said, it's kind of like most of it's going to be Syrah, right? 2/3 of the vines that we have planted in between the two vineyards are Syrah grapes, so it's going to have a lot of Syrah in it. The next most planted is Grenache, so it's going to have a good part of Grenache. After that comes a Cabernet, and then beyond that, you're talking about fairly smaller percentages. Mourvedre, again, we don't have a lot of Mourvedre, it's typically, it's only used in the Cuvée Lebec and the Barrel Select Cuvée. And then the Counois up until this year was predominantly only used in the Cuvée Lebec, and then, the projects like the Graciano or the or the Malbec or the Petit Syrah. Again, those you're talking typically 4 barrels, something like that, 3 barrels. Not a lot of wine, and again, remember you're only taking this much out of the bottom of all those barrels, so it's definitely, while there is some variation, it's mostly a Syrah and Grenache wine for sure.
And the bigger variation will come from the vintage itself. So the weather patterns, like how things ripened up,
That's
all
kind
those
of,
little.
that's kind of what I was meant when I was explaining it before. It's like it kind of gives you an amalgamation of kind of what the vintage. So with the 21, the cooler year that we had there, there's kind of some depth and complexity and some more. It's a little bit going to be a little bit less fruit forward than something like that. The 20 aggregate was a much more warm year, much hot year, a little bit more fruit forward. So.
Hey, along the lines of using stuff up, have you guys ever kicked around the idea of like doing a grappa?
Not officially.
I love it.
All right, take that as you have, Kip.
That's it.
No comment.
I actually did want to mention that we did send on along a little gift, which was
Yeah.
the harvest wine.
Yeah.
That's which is a fun wine. It's a dessert wine. It's a sweet wine, and it's really something that's Steve makes every so often, and has a lot of fun with. And that was kind of our thank you to you for being club members and loyal. And hopefully you can have a nice occasion where you want a dessert wine and enjoy that one.
Can you tell us about that? Like a little more, like what would you like?
Go ahead, Kip.
So that is a blend of 2 grapes that we don't even grow anymore. But back when the wine was made, we did have, it was a blend of Roussanne and Marsanne, I believe 60-40, if memory serves me correctly. It is, so it's called a Vin de Paille, in that traditionally these grapes, like back in France, you'd harvest these grapes late, lay them out on straw drying mats to further raisin up, and then you'd squeeze the syrup out of that to ferment, and it'd be such a sugar-rich environment that the yeast couldn't convert everything over. Personally, on that one, I get a lot of like dried apricots in honey. So for that, if I would go dessert pairings, but I wouldn't be going chocolate. Rather, I'd be going more vanilla or caramel-based desserts like creme brulee, flans. My favorite thing for it, and it's probably going to kill me from diabetes, but worth it as far as I'm concerned, peach cobbler a la mode with that poured directly over the vanilla ice cream. If that's not the perfect end to your night, then I suggest you reevaluate your life, because that is just gorgeous. But yeah, that one, like I'd say, go more for your vanilla or caramel based, or even your like stone fruits, or I wouldn't necessarily go as sweet as like lemon or tart as lemon, but maybe some orange based dessert as well. Something along those lines. And I would avoid chocolate. It's kind of the wrong flavor profile for chocolate, as far as I would suggest.
A lot of your reds go with chocolate. Really nice.
And I'm getting a bit of a chocolatey note out of a lot of the 22 vintage so far. So as far as the reds are concerned, so there's some fun pairings to be had there as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that bottle. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy it, and
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, guys, thank you all for joining us and being part of this, and being our valued club members. We love you. We wish we could see you here more often at the estate. So, thank you for taking time out of your evenings. Jeff, thank you as well for helping host this.
yeah.
And yeah, come visit again soon, guys. We miss you.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you in
Thank you.
October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say thank you, because for some reason we didn't see the invite to this. And I was just so impressed with your Graciano. I was looking at your website to order more, and I saw, oh, there's a virtual tasting coming up. I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. And it was May 23rd. I'm like, we're in May. What date?
It's like in 15 minutes.
So I just, so thank your staff for listening to our emails and letting us in. So thank you so much.
That would be Taylor, who's actually been quiet here, but she's been logged in and
She's
listening
great.
in. So
All right, thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Cheers. Thank you as always. for
Have a
doing
nice
it.
evening, all.
Great job, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
cheers.